doing? I'm Dan McGee. Welcome to my garage. Today's guest is Max Gail, longtime friend. He's a really good actor, writes poetry, songwriter, musician, pretty talented guy. Well, we sat down and talked for about probably about an hour and a half and went over some really cool stuff. Everything from the movie business to some of his pet projects. So I think we'll just jump right into it, and I hope you enjoy it. On with the show. Hey, how you doing anyways?
Overall, pretty good.
Yeah?
I'm feeling pretty good this morning. Pardon me?
You in California or are you in Texas?
No, I'm in California.
Oh, okay.
I just got a call from, I got, as part of my Emmy swag, you know, when we got Emmys, then they have these gatherings and then people pay into it to come and promote their products and stuff like that by giving them away. So you go away with a big swag bag. You know?
Oh, nice. I mean, yeah, I've seen those.
Not like the Oscars. The Oscars, I hear it's like $30,000 worth of shit you get, but
nice.
But one of them was a Portal. I don't know if you're familiar with Portal, but it's a device that's set up to work through Facebook Messenger.
Oh, nice.
It's like FaceTime, only it's got a little stand and it's got kind of like a screen.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I have seen those. It's kind of like a tablet, but it's specifically for communicating, right?
Yeah, and it's got a camera that follows what's going on. So if people move around or somebody comes into the shot, it widens out. It comes down. It works.
Really?
It works really nicely. So they have theirs set up on the kitchen table that can follow into the kitchen and then over to the living room. They got a little small kind of ranch house type place there, and so it works well to interact with the twins and so
that's your daughter. Your daughter's twins or your son?
My daughter, India. Yeah,
Okay.
They have twin girls that'll be 4 in April.
Wow, that's awesome.
And it's
now you come from a family of twins though, right?
Yeah. My mother had 4 pregnancies and 3 of them were twins.
Wow.
So we're all pretty close in age, but then you upped that one pretty big.
yeah. I'll you could do your twins and I'll do triplets.
Yes. Pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is. Actually.
How are they doing? Yeah, see,
good. They're in fact, Danny, Eddie's been at Vanderbilt now for maybe a few weeks now because they were home for like winter break. And then Katie came in just for a few days because she's only about 3.5 hours away in Iowa. And then Danny, we just took to the airport to go to Maryland this morning, actually.
What's he?
Eddie's going for chemical engineering, and he's actually going for a doctorate to be a professor.
Wow.
And he was just accepted to North Carolina in the doctorate program.
Wow.
And then Danny is going for, you know what? I'm not even sure. He's changed a few times, but it has to do with agriculture, but I'm not really sure. And then Katie's going for, I think like a physical therapy. Again, she changed a couple times, so.
Well, that's.
Whatever it is, it's way, everything that they're doing is way better than I could ever do. So I'm proud.
Oh, you're a pretty amazing guy, Dan. You've done a lot of things really well.
Well, I tried. That's all I could do.
Yeah. So What are we doing this morning? Other
Oh,
than I'm
you know
glad to
what?
hang out.
Why don't you introduce yourself real quick? I'm sure everybody
Uh-huh.
knows you, but just give a
Uh-huh.
quick introduction. What people would know you by, and then
Uh-huh.
it was mainly just to have a nice, friendly conversation. I haven't had one in a long time, but I
All
wanted to
right.
record it so we can share a conversation with other people.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, so what people would know me by? See, now that depends on what people you're talking about.
Yeah,
um, I, and that's come up for me a lot lately, and you know, because there's things I'm, best known as, depends on the same thing, who's knowing, but I guess. The most visible things I've done have been as an actor, because you're pretty visible, and there's a whole lot of different people that are part of making any kind of show happen. But if you're an actor in the show, well, you're the most visible.
right, right.
And then in terms of the numbers, I guess most people. So I would start with Barney Miller. But it's interesting. I just saw a thing that somebody posted something that the show started 46 years ago.
I
That's
seen that. That's amazing.
yeah, it's more than half my lifetime. I mean, I've spent half my lifetime since we ended the show. I think close to it, right around there. Although it did show up in reruns and is still in reruns, I still hear from people sometimes that have just discovered it or whatever. and then just staying with that sort of through line of acting, the most recent thing I've done has been in a daytime drama, which is a world I never really paid much attention to and probably rolled my eyes at a little bit. But on General Hospital, I did a story arc of a guy with Alzheimer's, and playing the father of the lead guy on the show, who's been on it for 25 years. And I had a really wonderful experience with the people there, and working on character that really changed. There was an arc for Wojo. I mean, Barney, things evolve, whether
Right,
it's intentional or not.
right, sure.
A lot of that was just in my acting, because I really had not had much acting experience before that. And then the way the interaction of writers and stuff. So there was there was an arc there, but it's a different thing with soaps, because it just keeps changing every day. It's not like you have the regulars and you kind of do the same. A lot of the sort of ongoing cop shows and stuff, and in some ways it's the same show every week, with different variations. And so I found that a really a cool experience, and it helped keep the wolf out by the mailbox instead of
Sure.
knocking on my door.
Yeah. I
And
know that.
and and the people who get their storytelling fix, because we're storytelling creatures. That's kind of what we're doing now, right? And
Absolutely.
but we have, some people are into, network television drama, and some into soaps, and some into Netflix, and some, there's a whole lot of stuff out there these days. It's not like
What's kind of amazing about the whole soap thing? Some of the most famous shows were soaps, but people didn't even realize that they were soaps, like Dallas.
yes, that's right. That's right. They were in nighttime soaps. They didn't
Right,
they didn't
right.
go with that
But if you
name.
told somebody you're watching Dallas, oh well, you're watching that soap, they would say, no, it's not a soap.
Yeah,
But it
yeah,
absolutely was. It's the
yeah,
same everything.
yeah,
Probably
yeah,
more
yeah.
money.
Well,
They
and
probably spent more money on the filming of it, but
oh, not more than probably they confused me. Because for one thing, those were the days networks couldn't own shows.
oh,
Um, yeah, they could only license them. The
okay.
idea being that they would have too much power over the creation of content, and
Oh,
eventually during, I think it was during the Reagan administration, but they got rid of that, along with the fairness doctrine, which said that you had to be balanced. not fair and balanced like Fox News, but
Yeah,
you
right.
actually had to be, if it was felt, that somebody got their point of view too much put across, then the news and others were obligated to hear the other side. But with the networks, they said, oh no, we would never use our power to make sure that our shows got on the air. We should be able to own shows too, and of course they did. So in those days, people would produce shows and deficit finance. In other words, they would spend more on their shows than they got from the network to show their 2 airings that they got as part of their deal.
Right.
But they could sell it to Europe primarily, but in Australia, English speaking word.
Right.
But
Sure.
then it was going all over the world. So that's where they spent the money to make the money.
Oh,
But the
neat.
idea that it's an ongoing drama that keeps unfolding. And
Right. Many storylines too, going at once.
yes, with a lot of different storylines. That was one of the things that with Barney, the situation comedies, which is a really very old form of theater that's been around for a long time. But it's because there was a situation. Each episode was about the situation.
Right. Right.
They
I
might
never
have
really
little
got that,
side
but now I
storylines,
get it. Uh-huh.
but Barney was the first one to really have 2 or 3 different stories going on that might reflect on each other, even not directly, but they would interlink in some ways, and then
Right.
that got taken to what was it? Hill Street Blues
Sure.
was a police show that had that kind of ongoing and stories that crisscrossed, and these guys would walk through and the camera would stay on. Now there's this story, and because people can track more, I guess, than was
They're
presumed.
they're giving us more credit than we deserve, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting one, isn't it? It used to be. One of the things that I loved about Barney Miller was the attitude that we had about trying to do the best show we could, and that the people, between the coasts were not like stupid, and there was an attitude in a lot of television. I remember doing, as a guest appearance on some other shows. And there'd be what we call a hole in the story. There'd be something in the script that if you thought about it for a millisecond, that doesn't make any sense.
Right. Sure.
And it would usually be quite easy to fix, just with a line change or just something to fix that, And so I would say, there's a hole here. We could. And if you think that's a hole, you should have seen the hole we had last week. You could drive a truck through it. It was kind of like, they don't know, But I think that we make a kind of an adjustment if we give our time over to something to watch it because we want to be entertained or healed. Somewhere there's that spectrum from healing to entertainment, and everything is kind of in between, just to take our minds off of what might be bothering us can be healing.
Sure, absolutely.
But if something appears that doesn't make sense, in theater they call it the willing suspension of disbelief.
Okay.
That's how we participate as an audience in stories. We know it's all made up. So you're making these little adjustments of just how involved am I going to get with this. If the opening movie tells you things right away, don't take this seriously.
Right.
You make that adjustment. Sure. So I think it's worth trying to fix those things, because that's the way people can become more engaged, as an actor with your part and as the overall.
Yeah. No, I
probably way more about it than a lot of people want to hear. But.
Oh, no, this is interesting, actually. The majority of people they're interested. They just don't know that they're interested because nobody's ever really talked about it.
Yeah. Or, or it just affects what they'll pay attention to.
Right.
and
Right.
yeah. But I think that in many ways, most people are smarter than in general media gives them credit for.
Oh, I agree with that.
You know,
Absolutely. Look
and
look
at
at
the same time,
some of the shows that are really popular. It's a lot of it with really smart comedy. You know what I mean? It's
uh
not
huh,
just, someone like a Three Stooges kind of thing. There's
uh huh.
actually really smart dialogue. The storylines are good. So, yeah, no, I agree with that.
And at the same time, there's this kind of flip that if people hear enough, if they get enough of their kind of media and sense of their their community or whatever, and what are the established truths, people will believe stuff that really doesn't make any sense at all. And I'm not just saying it needs to be logical and scientific,
Yeah. No, we're
because we have
we
spiritual dimensions,
we
but
without getting
just look where we
political,
are as a country.
we just lived through that. That if it's
Yeah,
said enough, people believe it.
yeah. I think
So,
we're still in the midst of it, and
yeah, I know.
we're getting a flip side to some extent, which in some ways sounds a lot like, now we're going to make America great again.
Right, I know. I know.
we're
Well,
gonna re we're gonna rag instead of MAGA.
yeah,
Uh,
right.
you
Yeah,
know,
we'll get out of that. Yeah, what's really amazes me, and I never really heard a lot about it in any interviews you've done, is your relationship with the American Indians.
uh-huh.
How did that come about? And I was during the '70s, right? The early '70s.
Yeah, yeah. Well, okay. That's you know, actually almost any question that I get in this way, it kind of goes back to where I was born and early childhood, and all of that's involved. Say, how did you get started acting? Well, I got born, and
Yeah,
then
right. There's
and then this
that.
happened, and then that happened. You know, so I mean, I was always kind of curious as a kid.
Okay.
I wished I always tried to find ways that I could. This goes way back before a lot of people, I guess. But the Tex Ritter, when he would finish a fight, he'd pick up his hat and he'd throw his hair back, and his hair would go, and then he'd put his hat on. I try to get my hair wet and do that. So I was into all the cowboys at the time, but I was
Hmm.
even more fascinated with Indians, and especially when we'd be out in the woods and stuff. I grew up where there was not what you'd really call a forest, but they were the woods and stuff. I was as inclined to have a bow and arrow and be imagining being native. And there was a
Like a
certain amount
forest
of,
preserve? Like, would it be like in the Chicago area we have forest preserves? So it's really, it's a plot of land which is a good size, but if you were in the middle of it, you would swear that, there was nothing else around you except those trees.
yeah. Gee, I just lost the video and
Yeah, that was me. My
uh,
camera. That was
okay.
me.
All
That was
right.
the
Okay.
camera's back on now.
All right. Um, yeah, in a way. I mean, certainly in a way that Chicago and Detroit area where I grew up, had those kinds of forests. A lot of them had been logged at a certain point and then kind of grown back, so they weren't like old
Right, not
growth
old
forests
growth.
where the
Right.
where the where the the root systems and all of that had been there for thousands of years, and the trees would pop up and die and stuff. But the whole thing is alive in a way,
Right.
because we do know that the trees connect down under the ground where they're bringing up the minerals. Most of the matter, the physical stuff that makes the wood, is pulled out of the air with the carbon. But
Oh, I
it
didn't know
all
that.
happens because of what's in the earth as well, in the water and stuff. So
Right.
I grew up on an island that was south of Detroit, right where the Lake Erie starts. And so it had all been logged. So it was not real big trees and not real deep. So you could move around in them really well. You could ride horses. When I got a little older, I had access to being able to ride horses. It was all kind of still bareback, and
Wow, neat.
so I had those connections, and then when I was about the time I headed out to California, and I around that time I read two books. One was called "Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee," which by D. Brown, who was a wonderful writer and historian, and just telling a story that I had not learned in any of my history classes and stuff about what had unfolded for the people of this land who were here before Europeans showed up.
Right.
And I read One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And that story, the novel, was the person telling the story was the character of Chief Bromden, who was
Really?
Indian.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's telling the whole thing. It was written by a guy, Ken Kesey, who was a writer and a wrestler up from Oregon. He had a writer's scholarship to come down to Stanford, and he was doing that. He was working as a kind of a night nurse or guard in a mental institution just to make some money.
Wow.
And he was also, that was during the time when the CIA was kind of putting acid out into the system to see what people would do. They dosed some of their own people without them knowing about it and did interviews with them. They had certain college professors and others taking it, So anyway, so that experience of doing acid and working night in the mental hospital and being a writer, that's where and then he always said when the character of Chief Bromden came to him, and since he grew up in Oregon, he did know about Indian people who had, because that was an incredible land with great resources, and there were a lot of people that lived there for a long time along the Columbia River, among other places. So that's where he got the sense of that character and how he could tell the story through the eyes of someone who was in and out of being catatonic and psychotic. And
right, sure.
But so anyway, I read that book, and I had made it out to California because it seemed like a lot of interesting things were going on out there. And I had an old high school sweetheart who had moved out there, and various things, and it ended up on a kind of series of flukes. But a play had been written. Kirk Douglas had bought the rights and had a play written. It was on Broadway. It didn't have a long run. But then a decade later or so, however much later, maybe not that much, but anyway, people started doing the play, but making it a little more like the book, making it more like the chief is telling this story.
Okay.
Because he's the one that kind of flies, at least he's the one that escapes in the end. For those who saw the movie, a native guy who, in the end, we became good friends. But anyway, on kind of a fluke, I ended up being an understudy for that part. And then the guy got in a fight with one of the other actors, and he got fired. And all of a sudden, I was done. And I did this play for a couple of years. I found something. I found something about acting that I didn't really know about. My mother had been an actress for a brief period before she had 7 kids, 3 sets of twins, and all that.
That's neat.
So, I mean, it wasn't like, if you'd asked people in the family or who knew our family, who's going to have a TV show,
right.
being a TV show, they would have said my brother or my twin sister. I would not have been
the person
at the top of that list, but that's how it worked out. And at that time, the federal government had closed down Alcatraz as a prison.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of discussion as it should be condos, it should be a gambling casino, it should be a park. But there is a treaty that says that when the federal government abandons lands that they've taken over, it goes back to the original owners. So a group of Native activists, kind of inspired in a way or resonating with the civil rights movement.
Mm-hmm.
And they went over and occupied it, and that was going on at the same time.
I kind of remember hearing a little about that, actually.
Yeah. Eventually, they were able to shut off the power and everything, and round them up, and so it never got that result. It's still there, and every year, remembering that time, why there's a gathering there of Native people. One of the reasons it had so much meaning is that there was a time when spiritual leaders and community leaders of Native American communities, Hopi, out in Arizona and Lakota in the Dakotas, but they
Mm-hmm.
would take them and put them on Alcatraz so they could tell your people are imprisoned on an island out in the ocean. It was just so it had a meaning in there. And then I ended up doing the play in New York for a while, and that was when there was an occupation of Wounded Knee at Wounded
Mm-hmm.
Knee. Again, a part of a reassertion of sovereignty rights, things that were in the early treaties that had been kind of pushed aside, and people are going, no, wait a minute, that's the law of the land, that's part of. And it's very interesting that we're in these times now. I know you want to stay away from getting political, but let's just be real about. I'm more interested, as you know, in conversations that have a center rather than sides.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I think when we pick sides, I mean, sometimes you got to choose.
Right.
You see somebody beating a child, you can't go, well, it's I mean, you have to act.
Right.
But a lot of times divisions are created by people who benefit themselves by stoking those divisions.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's,
So,
yeah.
If the problems are affecting everybody, then everybody needs to get involved, but easier said than done.
Right. Right. It
in the
is.
family, in the neighborhood, individually, we're quite amazing as a species. Collectively, we're still problematic. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But so for me, playing that part where and while those things were going on, and at the same time it was working a lot just with my own sense of feeling small or powerless to affect the world, which
Right. Sure.
not unlike these times, there were a lot of things going on in the 70s, 60s and 70s, Vietnam and civil rights. And
Right.
so there were a lot of things. And so, I find, again, not to harp on the political nature of it, there were a lot of people who felt that what people did what they did at, let's say at Wounded Knee, was a group of Native people took over the place of Wounded Knee, which was where there had been basically a massacre of Indian people, and in a big mass grave there, and kind of the ending of that period of history. And they went there as to kind of took over and to establish to make a stand treaty rights and stuff.
Sure.
And mistakes were made, but overall it was, the intentions were right and all. And so it does seem to me that there is something within us. I'm going to just keep talking to the rainbow here, because I guess it's going to go off, but I feel like I'm just blathering on maybe a little too much, but so I'll try to wrap this up in that it just was a chance for me to, first of all, gain an understanding of what had happened in the land I grew up in that I never really got in my history classes or anything like that. And it gave me a chance to understand things in a different way than the sort of
Back again.
the yeah the dualities that I grew up with. I grew up with the dualities that came from Europe. The sort of Protestant versus Catholic
Sure.
duality. People, killed each other for over long periods of time, and still have some conflicts around that. And then within, right. And the communism versus capitalism, kind of different ways of dealing with something that really challenges that came up out of the Industrial Revolution. And so there were a lot of these that I found, wow, there's a whole other way of looking at these things that kind of transcends and enfolds those this side against that side into something a larger way of looking at things. Kind of like when you're breaking up a fight with your kids, to put them in touch with your siblings,
Right.
Hey, we love each other, so that's, and then as I there was a part of me, as you know, Dan, I'm not a great musician or a great singer, but it doesn't stop me from doing those things. Music has always meant a lot to me. Somehow the acting opened me up to be able to write my own songs about the kind of,
Sure.
my own life path, but we all have, there's a kind of universal path through life.
Right.
And, so that opened that up for me. And then that led me to connect with a wonderful Native American artist who had been a part of the, 60s music scene, along with Bob Dylan and Joan Baez and others, Buffy St. Marie. And then through Buffy, I met a lot of these Indian people that I'd seen in Time magazine or on the news or something, a part of that leadership.
Sure.
And to connect with spiritual ways to pray and stuff with the Sweat Lodge that really helped me connect back into the Christianity I was raised with, but to understand in a much deeper way. And in a lot of ways, I think probably saved my life, since I got to a place where I was making pretty good money and I could go ahead and buy drugs and have friends around me who would, share my drugs with me happily. And, the kind of the John Belushi trip, that who can stop that. And so that's that, believe it or not, is the short version of how I got involved with all of that. And I still think it's still a lot of my friends and relations and interactions in my, my Facebook feed, are Native American people. So I could bring that around right now if I
no,
I'm on a roll, I guess.
We've got all kinds of time, so it's up to you. I just don't want to overdo it for you.
All right. Well, I was just listening to a podcast that some friends of mine in Malibu invited me to do. And they're wonderful people and we had a great time, but I was listening to it. And it's, it's me going on and on like this because that's what they invited me to do. But I had to stop. I say, doesn't that guy ever take a breath? Did he use some technology to close the space? Just, but with the inauguration, the sort of breakout star in a way or whatever, the bright light in many ways was this young, wonderful poet.
Oh yeah, I seen her. Very good.
And she was introduced as the new poet laureate. But she's actually the new youth poet laureate. They've created a role of a national youth poet laureate.
Oh, okay.
Because the poet laureate at this time for our country, and it was right back when Kennedy's inauguration, he was the first one to have Robert Frost, poet Robert Frost, speak
Okay.
at his inauguration, to kind of create that role. And Maya Angelou did it in her time, and become part of inauguration. And the poet, but our poet laureate, who's just been, had her reign, no, that's not the right word, but her playing that role for the third
Okay.
time, is a woman named Joy Harjo. And Joy is Native American. She's our
Oh,
first Native American poet laureate. She's also a wonderful saxophone player. And her poetry is wonderful, and it was just, so for a lot of us who are, a lot of Native and non-Native people who get how alive and researching and important those understandings are, and how important, even our whole system without a king was inspired by the Iroquois Confederacy. Where people,
oh, really?
yeah, our founding fathers, one of the things they recognized was, here's this 1,000-year-old, at least, way of people governing of the 6 nations of the Iroquois Confederacy, and having a way of kind of balance of powers and ways to come together and talk and work it out. And certain basic, a major difference was that women played a really significant role. They were not, women, early America, women didn't have the vote for quite a long time. They
Right.
were not
Right.
really. So there was that, there were things that were left out. But in terms of just seeing that it was possible for a nation to govern itself without having a king,
Right. Sure.
there was no evidence of that before. We have to have the king to have that. The king is dead, long live the king. Otherwise we'll be
Right.
fighting it out, which people did anyway. When the king died, they're still in there.
Right.
We're still dealing with that. But it's just in kind of the blind spot of America, for a lot of reasons. And so, when talking with friends, how do we bring this up in a way that doesn't take away in any way from this wonderful Amanda, wonderful person who's overcome her own challenges,
Sure.
and
Uh-huh.
delivered this beautiful message. And at the same time, I think there were some hoop dancers that didn't get much TV coverage. And during the week, there were some others. And of course, Biden has appointed Deb Haaland, who is a Native American woman, for the first time to head the Department of Interior.
Yeah, I seen that.
Yeah,
That's good, right?
it's huge. Yeah, because it's in the Department of Interior that the Bureau of Indian Affairs is set. And
Oh,
for
okay.
years,
That's
this was the
huge
way.
then.
This was the Bureau to screw Indians over as much as possible. We'd put them on
Right.
lands that had, that were to take them away from their lands, or they'd had their homes and farms and ways of living for generations and generations, and put them on some, seemingly desolate piece of land. And then they find out there's oil there. Well, now we're going to take that away.
I
I
know,
mean,
that's
it's
kind of
not
amazing, right?
it's a terrible record collectively, and everybody knows it.
Right.
So, how to make that, just bring that awareness, because I do think that most of the problems we have as people is just not being aware of other people's, walk a mile in my shoes or my
Oh,
moccasins, that
yeah,
kind of
no, I
thing.
agree with that 100%.
Mhm.
They don't have any empathy because they've never dealt with it, so in their mind, they don't even know what that means to them. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
If they
Mhm.
had to deal with the same thing other people did, then they might have the empathy, but since they haven't, it's like they can't connect with it.
Yeah, that's the way we are,
Right.
you know. But again, people can deliberately reinforce kind of dehumanized views of other people. Sometimes because they have them sincerely, they really believe that those people are,
Right.
what do they call it? Shadow projection. We don't want to look at our own shadow, so we kind of see it in somebody else.
Right.
And so that does go on. And then there are people who will manipulate that. And so we've seen a lot of that happening. And, it never seems to lead to a good result. The teeter-totter might go back and forth between who has power.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, to me, almost all of the bad comes back to people are just trying to gather as much money and power as possible, and they use groups of people to get to that. And then division is the best way that they could do that. If you could
Mm-hmm.
capture one group of people and divide them against another group, then they're going to be their protectors. The rich are going to be protected by this group.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's not new.
No,
I
no,
think
absolutely.
and I think more of it as a species, as we begin to get really large in numbers. And I don't mean like we have in our lifetimes where it's just been explosive, but but even going back to, what the periods that we call history,
Hmm.
that we have a couple of weeks of prehistory, and then we start studying history, but we've been around a lot longer, than history. But as we started to get into numbers, then we start to stack up and get those hierarchies. And you didn't have a military, until you had enough numbers that, sometimes people would have to, or feel they had to fight somebody from the other side of the mountain, so everybody in the community would have to come together around that. But when you start getting a lot of numbers, then you can pull away a certain amount of the young men or whatever and turn them into an army.
Right,
Or,
right.
I mean, it's a emergent. I like that. Like, some things, it's not like somebody's planning it all. It all just kind of emerges. But and we are very numerous these days as
Right.
humans.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. I need you to talk more. I'm talking too much.
Okay. I'm trying to think what else. Oh, you know what? Why don't you tell us a little about your organization, LAP? Because that kind of goes with everything you've been talking about. It's about
yeah. I mean,
communicating.
for me, it was like, well, how at a certain point in life, how do I keep moving forward and keep growing and learning and trying to be useful and trying, and at a certain time, it didn't seem like that was the acting path for me anymore. I had dropped out in a way, as you know. I had got after Barney Miller, I got married and had a child. And when our daughter was 8 months old, we found out my wife had colon cancer. And 2 years of hoping for a better outcome, later she passed, and I entered my single mom period, I call it, because
Hmm.
I was ready by that time to be a dad. It took me 40 years to get to fatherhood. But I was, at the very beginning of understanding what it is that moms come up with, and I did my best, but I was sorely lacking in many ways, looking back on it. But we got through it, and then I remarried and had some more kids, and I went and did another. Got back, busy with the idea as an actor, and I found that the business had changed a lot from the kind of multicultural, multi-ethnic shows of the 70s. TV had kind of gone back to pretty much all white shows, and then Fox had the urban network,
Sure.
and
Right.
since my family was mixed, both of my late wife and my next wife, were African American, as it turned
Right.
out, and so
Uh-huh.
my family was mixed, and my circle of friends and relations had a lot of diversity in it. So it was kind of like, this seems sort of a step backward, or where did I fit in that? And around that time, computers were showing up, and the internet was still pretty awkward to move around in, but there were these walled gardens, they called it, like America Online, where
Right.
people could get on and start talking to each other. And a lot of people thought, wow, this is a time when we can come together as a species and have a
Right, right.
better conversation with each other, and we can build trust, and and not many people foresaw that it would become, Facebook and Amazon and Google kind of amassing so much power and kind of delivering eyeballs to each other, where, we get the services for free, but we are the product
Right.
delivered, and then it could start to be used, because if you want to engage eyeballs, well, get people upset,
There you go.
promote that,
Right. Right.
they can gather around each other about who they're angry at and stuff. So it's kind of led us into this, and we're trying to find a way to, we want people to be free to speak and share what they think, and at the same time, wow, that can go down the wrong road pretty fast.
Yeah, it's
So
it's like we all of us that are on um the social media, we're the reality show now that
yeah,
people are going to and want to participate. I want to be in that reality show too.
yeah, and by the way, so, but actually, to get to your question, so I did this show with Frank Zappa's two oldest kids, and they were wonderful. I loved that family and all. But as I said, television had changed, and I kind of came out of it going, well, what made me think I needed to go back to acting or television? I mean, I was just on the road to find out, and that happened. So stay on
Sure.
the road to find out. And but I did have this idea that, looking back on it, was pretty naive, or not being clear about what my set of skills or energy was or anything. So it's when I learned that being ahead of your time is not really that different from just being wrong. Uh,
No, I know it's kind of amazing, right? A lot of the people that invented things, people don't even know about them.
yeah, yeah. So, but I had this thought that you could have a show that was set in a kind of place that didn't quite exist, but it wanted to happen. But what in those days we called a place-based comedy. It was not a sitcom like a family, like Danny Thomas or something. It was, or the Cosby Show. It was set in a police precinct, or a bar like Cheers, or a radio station like KCRP, So, but it could be set in a kind of place that actually would be a place that people could go and get access to computers, because we didn't have them in our pockets then.
Mm-hmm.
And a way to share and learn about them, because also what was true was that a lot of people didn't have the disposable income to buy a computer
Right.
and get onto America Online, and there were people in Harlem and LA and out on Pine Ridge. And so there were people who saw that there a need for that. So they created places that people could come and learn, people in the neighborhood could come and learn. And I thought, well, what if there was a show that was set in one of those places?
Mm-hmm.
But it actually was sort of facilitating and modeling people using them to tell stories of their community and share them. And part of what that inspiration was, that because people now had their own television cameras and their own recording decks, in their homes,
Right.
this show had come about, America's Funniest Home Videos, where the content was made by the audience.
Right.
I mean, it had kind of cheesy parameters around it. It was mostly Uncle Walt slipping on the dock, and
Right.
Aunt Martha's skirt blowing up, and
Right.
things like
Right.
that. And then it was kind of like, wow, the most exciting place anybody could ever be would be in a network TV studio audience. I mean, people submit their videos, and then the ones that win, we fly them to LA, and they're in the studio audience, and it's the
Right.
most exciting. I thought, well, that knowing just what a fabrication that was, I said, people have real stories, and there were people telling those stories. And so I came up with this. I decided finally to call them local access places, because I like the word lap, because it has all these great meanings. One of being a storytelling place, you crawl in the grandpa's lap and he tells you a story, kind of thing.
Sure.
But we also use it kind of like, say this, I could say this idea fell in my lap. In the dictionary, it says a domain of care, charge, control, and responsibility, which is kind of a cold, even the word domain is problematic in a way, but the idea when you say, oh, this is in my lap, or that's in your lap, or this is in our lap, we know what we mean by that, so you could say, well, all of our problems and all their solutions are in our collective lap. So I kind of ran with that name, and started to spend as much time as I could and learning on the learning curve with where those things were happening and where they were being supported. Because I'd been in a place-based comedy, smartly written comedy show, I was able to get in and, to meet the Secretary of Education and Interior and Justice, and on that level. And
Wow, nice.
it seemed like I could make this happen, but I really underestimated how much was involved in that kind of change. And the other thing I discovered was, while I was moving toward, more dialogue as a country and a world, in a way, we are moving further and further away from it. You could already see how that, when, like, a lot of things that were going on in the Clinton administration supporting community, had block grants in the inner cities and different things to try to get these things to happen. When Bush came in, all that stuff was defunded. It went a whole other direction, and efforts to get bandwidth just to people out of Chicago was really one of the epicenters of this community technology movement. And
that's where I met you, right? I met you. We did a lap on that.
Yes, and I had been finding that, I would get opportunities to, say, speak to the National Parks and Recreations group, that because they would have in their budget keynote. And by this time in my life, whatever stash I had built up from doing Barney Miller, which wasn't really that big because I was single and I put it into things I thought were meaningful and stuff, but that was pretty much whittled down, just stepping out of work and paying for things that were part of, part of that time. So I did need to find a way to try to make some kind of money with it, at least cover my expenses. And then I would say, well, can I get one of your workshop times too? Because if I'm up here talking about how we need to, share our ideas with each other, we need to think together and stuff. And I came up with this idea of running laps, which was to circle up and go around the circle. And then keep going around the circle. And that was the time I was in Chicago, because my wife's mother had died. So the family had moved back there or she had a stroke. I'm sorry. And so anyway, that's when we met, through our friend Jim Liu. And you were interested in directing and video, even though you had these other amazing skill sets of cabinetry and it's just like
I get bored really easy.
Well, and I thought it was really interesting how you approached that. I agreed to step in for Jim Liu, who had to go out of town and play a part in this film you were directing that was written by a friend of Jim's about his own marriage breakup. And I just, I was really struck with how open and kind of fresh and creative, and not encumbered by a whole lot of rules about how things should be done. And then I asked you if you would video a lap we were running at that restaurant over there, the
Heartland
Cafe.
Yeah.
And I love the way you shot it, because most people would think, okay, somebody's speaking, I need to get directly across from them and shoot them, which is one of the good things about Zoom. We can have conversations with people like you are, sitting around a table or across from a table.
Right, absolutely.
You would often get around and shoot, you'd move around. It made me think of being a kid when I'd come in and there would be a neighborhood party, and the kids, we'd sneak in and see if we could grab some cashews out of the nut bowl or whatever, just kind of being around the adults in a way. Uh, and you would often find a way to get like not just people talking, but also people listening. And you just, and then the other thing that I really was really impressed by, um, I've said this to you, but I want other people to hear this, that you would ask a question. So you didn't go like, oh, I'm shooting video, so I'm not a person here. I'm going to be invisible. You would ask a question, and often they were really good questions that other people wouldn't ask because they might be afraid of being sort of unhip.
Right.
Everybody was assuming that everybody knew, but actually people weren't clear on what do you mean by that and stuff. So as time went on and I had other opportunities to run laps, all right, and started to call it lap in,
Right.
to lap in with other people. I thought, well, I remember when there were the first sit-ins, and people want to sit in. What's that? Well, people think that, we should be able to eat lunch like other people in this county, and then there were be-ins and love-ins, and there was a TV show called Laugh In. And so there was something about that sort of noun verb kind of idea
Right.
that spoke to people, even though it'd be hard to actually define it. And but I had been connecting with other people I'd met on this journey, and we went up to Madison, Wisconsin,
Right.
to be with my friend Carmen up there, who had developed. Carmen was he didn't have a congregation, but he was an American Baptist church minister. He was a guy who'd grown up in a poor, rough neighborhood, but somebody had gotten a hold of him, and he did something really extraordinary. He was running two housing projects, poor, low income housing projects there that had always been problematic. But he got HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and to change their rules, which was quite a feat, determining like, did people have to have a college degree to have one of the jobs of managing or other jobs that were paid, because he said the people here are capable of it, and he pioneered this whole, or developed this whole way of the people, making their own decisions about their community. And it went from being the one that had all of the high school dropouts and all of the delinquents and stuff. It went to, they were the ones in the surrounding community who had the best high school graduation records, sending kids off to college, that other people in the community were sending their kids over to the after school program, and we ran laps with those kids and with those families and stuff, and circled up. And we did a lot of that. We traveled down to this town in Ohio that was where at a certain point I gotta make a living, and I got my appetite back and got back into a television show called Sons and Daughters that didn't last
It was
very
Hamilton,
long.
right? Hamilton, Ohio.
It was it? Yes, Hamilton.
Yeah, Hamilton, Ohio.
Hamilton, Ohio, where just sort of randomly the show had been set, but I'd gotten in an interaction with the mayor, and we ran a lap with that community. There were like 100 people in the circle.
Yeah, it was big. It was fun.
I remember the mayor said, "You really want?" I said, "When are we going to circle up?" Because that was part of the deal.
Yeah.
I think he said, "You really want to do it?" I said, "Yeah." And so it took most of our time just to go around once and have everybody lap in.
But honestly, even though we didn't do a lot of per person, we did a lot of people, and everybody really enjoyed it because they learned something about the people that they never even knew about.
Yes, people that they'd known for years, and these are all the active people in the community. So they thought they knew everything about everybody, and it turned out they didn't. It was a really wonderful, it certainly built up a trust that I still have, that if people circle up and share, and this is in all of our backgrounds, it's not like it's a new, not like I or anybody invented it, and it's a big part of a most 12-step programs and other kinds of collective programs, which often people will sort of roll their eyes at and make fun of, unless they've actually, their lives have been touched and improved
Right.
by it. There is a tendency, oh, we're going to have to listen to everybody,
Yeah. Right. Right.
But, and sometimes they, I don't know if I should stop if you're still taping or if I
You
should,
know what happens is I've got this hooked up to a regular camera. It's not a
uh-huh,
computer camera.
uh-huh,
So it only allows me to do it like about a half hour and then it shuts down. So
uh-huh.
if you see the lines continue because you're still going.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
So I should have
that's what I
explained
want.
that.
Yeah. Uh, so that, this is going by fast for me because I love that we're having this conversation.
Oh, I
And,
am too. This is awesome.
and I think, as, a lot of those things because of our lives and wanting to raise our kids and just things that went on, we kept in touch.
Yes.
But this is a time now to kind of revisit, and you got your camera fixed so you can look at some of the older tapes. And there were other times, the day you were out here in California visiting, and we were hanging out with my friend Floyd, but you'd pull your camera out and shot this just wonderful conversation with Floyd Red Crow Westerman. A lot of people, if you saw Dances with Wolves, Floyd played the old chief, but Floyd was a singer, songwriter, and a wonderful leader of Native American in the Native American world, who touched a lot of people all over the world. So we've had some great experiences, and I think this is a good time for to put out the possibilities that people can share with each other in ways where we are looking for the humanity in each other, and not where we're just stacked in opposition to each other. That will exist, but it's right now people are arguing about unity. So
Right, I know. That's kind of unbelievable. Well, yeah, I think we should be united.
yeah, no, I think we should be united.
Well, obviously we're at an impasse, so we're not going to unite.
Yeah. We shall see. One of the things about that idea of things emerging, is it shows up in our word emergency.
Mm-hmm.
Things happen where suddenly the argument about left and right or whatever is because there's been this accident, and suddenly there's a vehicle that needs to get lifted off of somebody it's on top of, or there's a fire, and we need to all hold a blanket so that mom can drop her baby down into the blanket, and then jump in herself out of the burning building. Or we have emergencies where we respond. Not always. Just remember New Orleans. Sometimes our response is hampered by our, but in a sense, we have that capacity as humans to put aside or transcend those differences and find action together. And in that we find relationship and understanding and empathy and it doesn't mean that everybody has to get there.
Right.
Because everybody's not going to, and that could be maybe scary in itself, because but anyway, so I really welcome that we're in this time of coming back together. And I think Zoom is one of the platforms. We've used others to do online gatherings, and it turns out that circle can work pretty well, even though you don't really see each other in a circle. If you set up a kind of an order so that everybody is, it doesn't give over to the extroverts in the room, who don't know what they're thinking until they say it. And it kind of brings out the introverts. A good facilitator, like a guy like Jim Liu, will do that wonderfully. Like, Joe, you look like you have something on your mind over there. We haven't heard from you. But there can be ways for a group to facilitate. And we did that in your town in Justice. I think we ran with, at a time when there'd been a an election, and there was
Right,
some,
exactly.
out of that came a lot
Right.
of different ideas and stuff. And I think that was a pretty effective time of people, having a chance to, again, transcend the differences and bad feelings and stuff that came up during the election, and find some commonality. I don't know how long it lasted, but
Well,
if we can make it more ongoing.
well, we
And
got elected and did some good things. So
yeah, that's right. That's right. And I think that, that is sort of missing from our way, especially since we are so big in numbers, that the only way to reach a lot of people is ads, which are all very kind of one-sided, just out of the way it is, and then
right,
that
right.
depends on how much money have you got to put the ads up, so it kind of shifts from being able to have thoughtful conversations.
Right.
So,
Well, you know what? Getting back to Hamilton,
uh-huh.
it was. I think this was probably it would have been between 2004 and 2007 is when we
Uh-huh.
were down there, because
Yeah.
that's when most of my tapes have a date on them, and that's when it was.
Uh-huh.
Well, they were pushing a program, and the program was called Vision 2020.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
like the whole eyes 2020 vision.
Yes.
But it
Yes.
was actually about the date 2020. And the
Yes.
town had this plan where they were transforming the town from it was a manufacturing town, because it's right across the river from Toledo, I think it is.
No,
Or
Columbus.
Cincinnati. Was it Cincinnati?
No, I think it was Columbus.
Columbus? Yeah,
Yeah.
it could have been. But wherever it was right across the river from a major city that built big machines, heavy duty machines that, were sent all. This was before China kind of, we gave all our stuff to China to build.
Yes.
But when that started happening, whatever city that was, their product went way down, and Hamilton built the nuts and bolts and all the small stuff for the big town, for the big city.
Right. Right.
Well, that directly impacted them. So now they have all these warehouses. They have this small city,
Mhm.
and they don't have they don't have any infrastructure they don't have any orders for manufacturing anymore. So now they got to transfer this small city over to something completely different.
Uh-huh.
And they chose it to be a destination spot.
Yes.
You would go to vacation there, which was kind of an amazing move when you think about it. So I would love to go back. I would love to go back. And I know they had a good start, but I would love to know how on that list of 2020 vision, what were they able to do in those, whatever it would be, 16 years since we've been there?
That's a great idea. I love that idea. I mean, it would take a certain amount of, searching back for the contacts or whatever, or maybe just outreaching to, it certainly could be done.
Right.
And I think that would be because of where Ohio is, kind of within this seemingly, all one side against the other, but actually it's a pulling apart within the larger community, but that has played out in Ohio,
right,
in significant ways. And it would be I'd like to commit with you right now to seeing what we could do
I think that would be fun to do.
Uh-huh. And I think it was really quite amazing, given how many people were in that circle.
Yeah, and
how effective it was.
If I'm not mistaken, the population was literally like cut in half because there were no jobs there. So half the population of that city had left.
Yes. which is not unlike, I mean, where I'm from, Detroit. I grew up
Right.
on the kind of the downriver fringe of Detroit. But my dad had his store in Detroit, his office supply store, and I mean, but Detroit, from when I grew up, and it was the manufacturing center of the world,
Right.
and booming and growing to, basically cut in half, and trying to figure out how to deal with its abandoned houses,
Right.
and a lot of other places too. And but I think that in particular to reach out there and to follow up with it and to kind of tell that story.
Right.
And I do feel like with all the different ways that are sort of accepted ways of people coming together,
Right.
which more and more gets kind of put out. The only way to come together is come together and throw something through a window, or just get out of hand.
Right.
And then how that division is everywhere. That division is within our our military and our police and all, because it's a community-wide kind of division. And it could, just to put out the idea, well, we could do something else too.
Right. Right.
And so let's do that. You'll have all that together by next weekend, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, this would be the time.
Yeah. No,
think,
it'd be cool to do.
All right. So we're putting our stake in the ground, as they
There we
say.
go. Let's do
Here we
this.
go.
Oh, you know what? I was looking on somewhere on the internet. I seen this thing, and I'm not sure if you're part of it or not. But there's this thing called Cameo. Are you
Yes,
into that, or?
I'm into it. I I first heard about it on this breakfast group that of film composers that I've been sort of bootlegged into as a, because I am interested in music, and friends started it, and it's
Sure.
now since COVID, it's become a Zoom gathering. But and somebody brought the young man who I think is in Chicago,
Oh,
who started it, and I think it's a wonderful idea. I've had some hiccups just getting going on it. It's
okay.
just that are some of mine. Even though I got into all of this sort of internet world early by comparison to a lot of people back in the early
Oh yeah,
90s.
it was
But,
kind of amazing that
and
I learned more about things that were coming up. Like you would mention it, and then 10 years later, I would tell Mary, I said, Max talked about that like 10 years ago. He said this was going to happen.
yeah. Well, in a lot of ways, I sometimes think, okay, when I started, it was like I came over this ridge, wondering what's on the other side of the mountain. And I saw this beautiful valley, with a wonderful river running through it, and just waiting for wonderful things to happen, And just as I got up to start to go down in that valley, I got overrun by a herd of buffalo, of everything that came once the browser and all this, all these things that people had other ideas of how to finance it and how to make money off it and how to, and some flamed out and others became absolutely huge. And, and I just, in some ways was not able to keep up, and maybe there's an aging factor in there, or playing a guy with Alzheimer's for 2 years slowed me down a little bit or something,
Mhm.
too much sugar. But anyway, so it's been just, I hope this week, I'm thinking I'm going to get that cleared up, just how to use it. Simple things like a friend of mine did start a fan page on Facebook for people who really want to engage as fans of
I seen it. It's
my
really good,
acting work.
actually.
Yeah, she's done a wonderful job, and I mean, keeping those things alive and interesting means keep putting something out for people to respond to,
Right.
and people I think do appreciate a chance to kind of connect back, but it's not a relationship. I've been into the acting or the music and doing it, and the notoriety part of it that was there back in the Barney Miller days, was more like, well, how can I use this opportunity where they want to tell a fan story? A typical
Right.
kind of, this is the new actor, he's got his new TV show, but it's pretty much the same story you've heard, uh, how he's helping the poor downtrodden Indians. And I want to say, no, it's much more the other way. I'm getting my heart, mind, and soul expanded by what I'm learning here, and
Sure.
so those were opportunities maybe to try to bring something else into the story.
Right.
And sometimes you'd succeed, and other times they go, yeah, and never show up, but I think that they're, so anyway, I wanted to keep Cameo is more based on that, for those that don't know, it's the idea that people can, for a fee that makes it worth it as a celebrity, in terms of time and stuff, to send a video, happy birthday or congratulations or what, they might want to, might want to say happy anniversary to their spouse, or happy birthday to their dad, or whatever it is, and you make a short video, and they make all that very easy. You just push a button and the video's on, and then they send it, and you get paid, and they take a cut of it, and the people
Oh,
are
wow.
happy because nobody made them do that.
Right. Right.
So and all of that opened up to me after many years of not wanting to do it and not needing to do it. I passed when people say, well, you want to come to one of these autograph shows, and part of me would think no, because I don't want to end up over in the corner and nobody's
Right.
coming by.
That'd be a bad feeling, wouldn't it?
But the other part of me thought, well, that's a lot of money because the established it would be like $30 for a photograph that you you autograph for them, and you have a conversation with them and stuff.
Right.
And it just seemed to me, I was thinking more about, if you are, especially in those times where there were only 3 networks and stuff, if you're in a show like that, it's pretty hard to be missed if you go in a restaurant or get on a plane or something.
Right.
But a lot of times there'd be these people that would go, oh, you're eating with your family. They come over. I'm your biggest fan. I'm really, but it's really just because you happen to walk in there. It could have been anybody. It's
Right,
just they
sure.
want to make connection, and I understand that. I'll still get a job or meet somebody that I've seen their work. I've been touched by them, and I would want to connect, and I might think, I don't know if I want to bother them, or
Right,
all of
sure.
that is natural, but what I finally learned when I finally did it was somebody that kind of just stayed on me, and then I realized, boy, I could really, I could use that money. I need it to keep feeding my family and stuff, and what I found was those people are often very thoughtful, often very introverted. They would never come up to you in a spot like that.
Oh, okay, neat.
But they love to go to them. A lot of them have been doing it for years, and they go to the table of whoever it is they want to go to. So,
Sure.
and they really have thought about it and care about it. And it really was, I learned, well, this is meaningful for some people,
Right.
and it became meaningful for me, So then when Sue said, I could start one of these fan pages, and it has been, especially during the months as my character on General Hospital, was reaching the last stages of Alzheimer's, but even all through it, actually, the interactions I would have with people, on the crew of General Hospital. This disease touches so many people,
Sure.
but in the, in people who just got great value out of, because the writing I think was very good, and it really helped a lot of people to go through that experience and not feel so alone and so overwhelmed, or at least feel that they weren't alone. So I think Cameo is fills a niche in there. But I didn't want my Facebook page to be my Facebook page that I have, that I started. That's much more about the kinds of things we've been talking about. There are a
Right.
lot of
Sure.
Native American people there. There are a lot of technology people there, a lot of music people. They all kind of overlap, but it's not so much fan stuff in that way, where
Right.
people just
Right.
really want to share on that level. And Cameo provides a way for that to happen. And also, again, especially in these times where work is shut down, and so I'm hoping this week to get that straightened out so I can be a little more proactive. But of the ones I've done so far, it's a pretty cool deal. So
Good. Yeah, it sounds good.
so if there are people that would like just to be aware of it, they may be listening and say, well, I don't give a hoot about Max Gail, but if I could check out Cameo and then and so, I mean, Snoop Dogg is really big on Cameo.
I seen that.
He's
I
making
went
a
on there
lot of
just for
money
the
on
heck of
Cameo.
it to see who was on there. And there's,
Yeah,
believe it or not, I was surprised that there was some really big people on there, but there weren't a lot. So to find you on there, it'd be easy to do.
yeah, and I would appreciate if there's because it's basically going to go to support doing the things that we're talking about.
Sure.
Frankly, I mean, anything that I mean, I want to stay alive, and
Yeah. Well, there's that.
but that's all part of it, because it's kind of my through line. It's like if there's anybody that says, gee, that would be fun. I used to watch that with my dad, and he would really, or whatever, by all means. And there might be somebody else on there that, and actually the conversation I had with Matt, his name is Matt, I'm pretty sure, and I hope to be talking with him again. I see possibilities for LAP in that way too. Any place where there's a possibility for people to circle up online or in real time, in
Right.
real space, and have a set of protocols, kind of that, well, this is the way, this is a way to keep the conversation going in a good way, where it doesn't degenerate into arguments.
Right.
We know where the arguments are, and
Right.
people,
Right. Yeah.
what we're looking for is where the solutions or the understanding and stuff. So
Right.
I see possibilities within that platform to do that, and I know that for all the human beings that are inclined to just, be very clear on the right they're fighting for, and that's kind of
Right.
what they're looking, there are just as many who are looking for, how do we find a way that we can
Right.
we can find a way together. And so any platform that supports that, I think is a good thing. And
Well,
so
when we were recording, and say we had 20 people in there, I always thought, "Oh, I wish I had 20 cameras so I can get the reactions of everybody in real time for the whole thing."
uh-huh,
Well, we actually have that technology to do that now, because
that's right.
everybody that's on Zoom is the camera person now. So realistically, we could do a lap now. I think we could do it a lot better than we could, as far as filming wise. But there's nothing like the live version of it
Yeah,
too.
but even in a live situation, people have got their. I mean, everybody's got a camera in their pocket with them. Not everybody. There are still some people that don't because they don't want to, and some because
Right.
they can't afford it. But in general, it's
Right,
become so
exactly.
ubiquitous. So, then it gets to like, well, how do you look through all of that, or how do you make that like available to share? And but those are things that certainly are doable. There are
Right.
probably some people already working on that now, but I'm going to see.
Oh, bless you.
Thank you. Um, uh, so just to have that capability of, being able to not just see where the the the, the pinpoints of controversy and conflict are, but to see where those understandings are, and see them and look for them amongst each other. I think is doable, and the lap is certainly not the way to do it, and I wouldn't want anybody to think of it as the way or even the brand to dominate, but it is a way, and it's really based on something that's kind of universal and ancient for humans,
Right.
and I think that so it's sort of part of our DNA in a way, and it's kind of a thing where, in a way, a lot of times when people end up, hanging out in the kitchen and having that conversation, where it kind of goes around, and that doesn't, always have to keep going around, because once you establish that connection, then sometimes you can let space be there after someone's spoken, and
Right.
shared, and
Right.
for people to think, there are all of those possibilities, um, which I think are where we'll find a way out of this kind of standoff we seem to be in.
Right. I mean, I definitely, getting back to at the beginning of our conversation, that if you could walk a mile in, you know, someone else's shoes, you'd appreciate them more. And communicating sort of does that.
Yeah, you may be a lot better than actually the metaphor of walking a mile in their shoes, because if their shoes don't fit,
Right.
you know, that's going to be a long
Well,
mile.
then you
I
probably
mean,
took the wrong shoes.
yeah. I mean, that's the interesting thing about metaphors. Some metaphors that we use and have been around, and they're really useful in a certain way. And then if but you can only take them so far.
Right.
But that is how we think. We think about how does something we do know, in a way within us that we trust, apply to something that maybe we don't know. It's how we, in a way, all language is metaphor. So
I
this
did
would be
learn,
another one.
right. I did learn something as I'm getting older, that even the simple thing is driving and someone cuts you off. First thing
Uh-huh.
you want to do is you want to flip them off or
Uh-huh.
swear at them.
Uh-huh.
But I've learned, when they cut you off and you meet them at a light, instead of flipping them off, you look at them and you say, "Oh, geez, I don't know him, but that could be my mother, or that could
Uh-huh.
be my aunt, or that kid's as old as my son or daughter."
Uh-huh.
You know what I
Uh-huh.
mean? It automatically makes it like, well, whatever. I'm
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna flip off someone I know, even though I don't know
Yeah.
them. It's
Yeah.
just, it was an accident.
Yes. Yeah. And the other time we that get that insight is when we accidentally do it to somebody.
Right.
We accidentally, go to change lanes. We thought
Yeah.
we were tracking it, but we didn't really make that full turn. We
Right.
don't have
Right.
that extra, spread mirror on our, anyway, we thankful that somebody else was paying better attention than we were.
Right.
We
Right.
avoided an accident,
Right. Yeah,
or,
I've got this whole thing I do where it's like, instead of, ignoring them, and I just do this, I go, "Sorry,
yeah,
sorry,"
yeah, yeah.
you know? Right.
you know.
So,
Uh, I remember I used to when I'd go to the barber shop as a kid. Cliff Grunda had a barber shop, and the Grundas were one of the big families in my town. All the rest of them were Catholic families. They had like 8 kids, and they lived in what was the house with the barber shop down in what had been the living room.
oh,
That
okay.
was pretty much the business district. There was a market and a drugstore that were both built to be that, but all the rest of the businesses were once houses on the business street, Macomb Street, and but he would have popular mechanics and popular science, and I loved reading those. And one of the things I loved was new ideas from the inventors.
Oh,
With the
okay.
little section they would have in there, where and I remember one was that you'd have this thing that was kind of like your radio antenna, only it had a little sign on it that could say thank you, or please or something.
Right,
I was
right.
like, well, that's a good idea, instead of waving, trying to catch their eye in the mirror or something like that. But lately it's occurred when that occurs to me, I think, geez, these days they would have all kinds of messages to put on those
Yeah,
signs.
right, right.
Probably better leave it unsaid,
Yeah, yeah. I
or
mean,
they'd
just
be
just think about it now. You've got all these emojis you could do now too.
yes, yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
so
Maybe leave it alone.
yeah,
But
right.
and but anyway, um, this is um, this has been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed it. We should make it. Maybe we could make it regular and invite people to lap in with us.
I think that would be an awesome
Just
thing
lap
to
in at
do.
Dan's garage, and we can put something in the center that we want to lap around, or just let it emerge
Right,
out of what comes as people, they've learned over time, like, certain things said, okay, let's go around once and just everybody say their name and put in a good word, let's say,
right,
but actually make it a word that's what you're bringing, what you're looking for, what you'll nurture and support, you know. And one thing that does is just by going around that, you get a sense that, first of all, everybody's now spoken into that circle.
right,
They're not sitting back. I haven't spoken yet, and then the next one be maybe take your turn and take your time, and you can set up, like for that one, everybody take a minute or 30 seconds or 10 minutes or whatever,
right,
based
right,
on how much time you've got and stuff. But you're trying to get so where it's what there's a wonderful woman wrote a book about her work called Pure Spirit, calling the circle, the once and future culture. And her notion is you get to where you're pure facilitating instead of a good facilitator like Jim Liu or a bad one like someone else. It's everybody's holding it together, which is
right.
where it really works. And
Sure.
so, that's where I came up with also everybody's a co-pilot.
Right,
You have a pilot
right,
to start with, and use that metaphor of a relationship, so you can take it up to the 50,000 foot level, or you can come down on the ground. You have used it, guiding it around, and everybody, when it's their turn to talk, they're the pilot, but you're all co-pilots, holding that circle together.
right.
And it would be interesting to put that out with to start with our folks and lap in at Dan's garage, and
Yeah, no,
again.
we'll definitely do that. I'll call you and then we'll, set up some kind of a list and we'll definitely do that whenever you want to do it. I think that'll be
Okay,
really,
well,
really good.
whenever we want to and can, but I think
Right.
I see that coming up soon.
Good.
and
Sounds
and
good.
and maybe I'm right now, I'm thinking back. One thing is, I still have all my AOL emails. I never migrated off of. I have some Gmail, email. I mean, email names that are
Right,
pretty
right.
good. Run laps and lap it up and stuff like that. But I've stuck with my AOL for a long time because they were really good at not getting hacked. And also, it's just kind of hard to migrate your email to something else. So I have, I think 104,000 old emails or something.
Oh, geez.
I might be able to search back in there and find some of the people, and we could outreach in that way
Yeah, that would be good.
to those people, if any are those who are still alive.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
it's what's nice is it's searchable.
yes,
If you
yes,
remember the
and
name or close to it, it'll come up.
yeah, or just the in the if the name Hamilton,
Right, right.
you know,
Yep.
and again, I have some wonderful relationships in Chicago for the time I spent there, and because it was an epicenter, and just one thing, sort of my own mental note, but the way that things happen, there was one of the presenters at the Zoom gathering for this composers breakfast club I was telling
Mhm.
you about was a young guy who grew up in Chicago, started learning music in the church, then was in his high school music program and jazz, and then went to Berklee School of Music, which is a great music school. And but among other things, he was with Black Eyed Peas for a long time,
Oh, wow.
which have kind of come back together now again after a while, I guess. But he's been very successful with playing with a lot of people and doing things. And one of the things he's doing with his resources and stuff, and especially so many of these musicians that have been on the road most of their lives, they're kind of
Right.
thankful in a way because they've gotten to spend more time. If they're not on the road for 200 days, you have a lot more time with your family,
Right.
and but he's developing a program for musicians to learn about finance and kind of wealth maintenance, or what
Right.
things that often people especially if they get a big hit a big dose early on,
Sure.
they can make a lot of mistakes, some
Right.
of them just with their own private lives, and but in those ways. And I think of some of the people that I met in Chicago who who have been doing that work, with just in their neighborhoods and in their world where there isn't, there are kids who are not growing up well. Their dad, has become very successful as a finance manager or something.
Right.
They're
Right.
growing up in it. They're
Right.
growing up where that's how people do things. No, they're growing up in a world where nobody has access to those things. And so, and I, that's a chance to, now he lives out here in North Hollywood now, but I would love to make some of those connections. And this could be a forum for us to do that, to not just hook them up with email, but to
Right.
actually, kind of get them to sit down together in a context, with, so I'm very excited about this.
All right. Sounds good. All right.
All right.
I'll let you go.
All right.
And then I recorded this. So
Okay.
what I'll do is I'll there's not gonna be much editing of it. I'm just gonna
Uh-huh.
pretty much let it run.
Uh-huh.
And then I'll make sure you have a link and you can put it wherever you want it. If you want to put it on your the Max Gail, the one that Sue's doing.
Uh-huh.
This was
Yeah.
a nice conversation. It'd be nice to be there, I think.
Yeah. And helpful as a way of sharing it with people, and then
Right.
I'm going to work on, editing my responses, just to there's a sign, uh, Danny Arnold used to do this all. Danny, who wrote and directed a lot of the Barney Millers and was kind of the comic genius behind it. When somebody would get a little too big,
Hmm.
rather than say don't do that, he just go, just just bring it down.
Right.
Um, but at the same time, sometimes it's good to just let it flow.
It is.
But
I think so. There's a time and a
um,
place where you definitely should bring it down, like
uh,
when you're doing your elevator pitch in an elevator, right?
yeah.
But
I
yeah, when we're doing this, we've got all the time in the world. It's just a matter
yeah
of if somebody wants to, ride the whole journey with us.
yeah yeah. And so great. Yeah, I'm always more drawn to the elevation pitch than the elevator pitch.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, that's the better one. All right.
All right, brother.
Thanks, Max.
All right,
It's
as
been
usual,
awesome as
give.
usual.
All right,
And we'll
and get
definitely connect on doing a Zoom lab.
cool, and give my love to anyone who gives a hoot.
I will.
All right,
Talk to you later.
Chris says hi.
I know. I think I heard her in the background.
Yeah.
Tell
All
her
right.
bless you. I heard her sneeze.
Okay. All right.
All
All
right.
right.
Talk to you.
Bye.
Bye.